Ma'am, meanwhile, can I ask something?
Yeah, please.
I'm a candidate. Ma'am, I just actually.
Sorry?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if we publish a literature review paper on our topic.
Yes. Hello? I think there is some problem with your connection. You are not audible.
Hello.
A very good afternoon to one present here. I, Krishna Modi, on behalf of GL Bajaj Institute of Management, affiliated by Chaudhary Charan Singh University, Meerut, welcomes you again on day 2 of 5 days faculty development program on systematic literature review with sub-theme of writing process of literature review and different inclusion and exclusion techniques. I extend the heartiest welcome to our Dean Ma'am. A special welcome to our eminent resource person, Dr. Enid Masi Ma'am. I also welcome head of different departments, faculty members, and the participants. As it is said, the writing process of a literature review involves various key steps, including planning, searching for relevant resources, organizing, and finally writing the review itself. To throw more light on this information, we have among us Dr. Enid Masi Ma'am as our valued resource person, who is Associate Professor and headed Department of Business Studies, GSP SC, Sam Higginbottom University of Agriculture, Technology and Science. She earned her doctorate degree from Allahabad Agricultural Institute on topic entitled Implication of Voluntary Retirement Scheme in Public Sector Organization. She has a vast teaching and research experience and has attended various conferences, seminars, workshops, activities among various disciplines. With this, I request ma'am to kindly head over her session. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Kritika. Thank you so much. And I want to take this opportunity to thank the staff of GL Bajaj Institute, and special thanks to the Dean Ma'am for giving me this opportunity to be a part of this very important FDP program, which is being organized by a department, by a school. I also want to congratulate to the organizing committee who is working very hard. And if I look to the panel, the people who are coming to deliver the lecture are really of an eminent professor, professors from a very high degree, a very high caliber. I think myself that the professor who are there on the board with you all are really a very eminent professor. I think I'm just a student in front of them, and I'm here just to learn something new from you all, apart from trying to add something to your knowledge also. I again want to thank to the management that giving me this opportunity. And today I'm here to deliver a lecture on systematic literature review. Just before this session, I am having an interaction with the dean of your school, and I really got inspired that ma'am has a thorough knowledge about a systematic literature review, and we'll discuss few points also. I also like to welcome all the participants who are here. The number is very good. 293 participants had already joined. And I know that there are others also who are in the process to join this session. So I wish all the participants a happy learning. And we come to the topic of today's topic, that is systematic literature review. I hope it's visible to everybody.
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
Okay. So let's start a systematic literature review.
Sorry, ma'am, I'm sorry for interruption. Actually, ma'am, can you view it in a full screen?
Yeah, just a second. Let me just see. It's not there in a full screen because from here, what I can see is that it's a full screen only. Let me just see one more time.
Convert your PPT into full screen. That's right.
Ma'am, is it a full screen now?
No, ma'am.
Dear professor, you need to click on the right side button. If you can see the PPT mode is there. You see, check at your screen towards the right.
Yes,
Yeah, this one. You need to click on this.
I'm clicking on that only, ma'am. Just a second. Last time, like when we were,
What you can do is, professor, once you close the PPTs, then please reopen it.
okay, I'll just do that. I don't know what is the problem which is going on.
Professor, you can open the PPTs on your laptop and then start sharing.
It's open on my laptop. Just a second, I'll just do that. I'm doing
Stop
that.
sharing and then share once again.
Let me just a second. I'll join again. Then I'll do.
All right. I request host to keep this in mind. The moment ma'am will join, immediately enter her.
Yes, ma'am. Definitely, ma'am. Amit, ma'am, if you want, we can share the PPT on behalf of you.
Okay, what?
So, ma'am, do one thing. Can you please share your PPT with us on that
Yeah.
FTP email ID?
Okay. I'll just ask the office person to help me out in this. Just wait for some second. I'm trying my level best. And I'll mail you also. I'll do both the things. Just a second.
No worries, ma'am. We'll wait for a few more seconds.
Yeah, please.
During the trial session, it was functioning properly.
That is what I'm.
Yeah.
That is the problem, because at that time it was functioning properly and I did nothing after that. Hello. Hello. I'm just mailing the. I mailed you the PPT. Please check.
Yes, sure, ma'am. Sure, ma'am.
Kritika, did you receive it? So that I can join it from the other.
Yes, ma'am, we have received the PPT.
Okay.
Ma'am, please start. Hello. Ma'am. Enid, ma'am. Hello, ma'am.
Organizing committee members, please do inform the eminent speaker that PPTs are functional. She can join and start the session. Professor Masti, kindly unmute yourself.
Hello. Okay.
Yes. Now you're visible and PPTs are also clearly visible.
It is clearly visible. Okay.
Fine.
So let's start the systematic literature review. I just want to give you a brief introduction about myself. Myself, Dr. Enid Masti. I'm the associate professor and head Department of Business Studies in Schwartz. And my area of research is human resource management. There are like more than 10 PhD scholars who have completed their studies under me. And I'm here to discuss with you about a systematic literature review. Please, let's move to the next slide. So why, first of all, it is very important for us to understand that why one should write a literature review. As a very popular saying from the Carl Sagan, it clearly says that you have to know the past to understand the present. We all the research, whatever research we do, it is very important for us to know the past, because until and unless we know about our past, it is very difficult for us to understand about the present. Whatever, you can take it like any area of research, whether it's an area of management, whether it's an area of other humanities, whether it's an area of medical sciences also, you will see that it's very important that we must understand the past, because that past will give us a correct knowledge, it will give us a correct idea that how things have changed in a coming time and how it has proceeded that we are here at the present time. So before we do any sort of research, like it is basically whenever we do any research or whenever we do a literature review, it is expected from us, every researcher or every scholar, that we must first look into the past. Next slide, please. Need of a literature review. As the research field grows, it is useful at some point to undertake a review of the body of work in that field to understand where it is and where it's need to go in the future. In my previous slide, I was just discussing with you all that I'm just discussing with you all that it is important for us to look into the past so that we can work into a future, work in the present time. But if we look to this definition or this explanation which is given by Aglonia in 2016, it clearly says that literature review is not only important for us to work in a present, but it is also important for us to look into the future. Because if we look to the present work, whatever we are taking in our area, we will see that in order to identify a gap, it is important for us to look to the past or to understand the past or to know the past. But how it is going to change, because if we look to, like, if we, for example, if I want, because I'm into an area of HR, if I want to see that how the human resource aspect has influenced different industries or the areas where people are working, we will see that gradually with the time, the how management is dealing with the people is now changing. Now people are more focused towards the behavioral aspect. And how we can say that? We can only say that when we gradually look that how in the past people are taking care about the human resource in their organization now at the present, and just on the basis of that past and the present, we will be able to predict the future of the people, how they will be handled into the organization. Different concepts, we often see that there are different concepts which are changing. We often see that the concepts which are not even existing at the present time, in few years, in coming few years, we will see that those new concepts are emerging in every area. Like it can be an area of HR, it can be an area of marketing, or it can be an area of finance also, or operation, or any area also. But how those new concepts or the new area, how that new ideologies get developed, all these things get developed when we see a gradual growth, a gradual development in different work which is contributing to that whole area of research, that how people are developing, how people are contributing their ideas. And just on the basis of that, or by analyzing that a contribution which are made by the people, we are able to identify different change, or we are able to predict different changes which are going to take place in the future, and how people are going to like add a new concept or the new area. So literature review basically helps us to strengthen the foundation of knowledge. Many times it happens that when we do any research work, the least exciting part for any person in that whole research work or the paper, whatever we are writing, the least exciting part is to write a literature review. If you ask any student to write a literature review, what they simply do, they just simply Google, or they just explore any database and try to find out a similar type of a study which is more or less similar to the topic, and they just simply try to copy down the literature which is available there, which is totally wrong. Because until and unless you have a strong foundation of your research, it will be very difficult for you to develop your work in the coming time. Because if you are not able to do a proper literature review, then the main problem which you are going to face is that you won't be able to identify a correct research gap, because it's really impossible for every person, for any person, to do a complete research. Definitely, if I am doing any research, then definitely it will give a light to another person, that where I leave my research can be a starting point for somebody else. So that is how a literature review not only helps us to understand our past, it also helps us to understand the present also, and it definitely help us to develop or to understand the future. So literature review, the very first thing which we have to understand by this FDP, as this FDP is focusing on the literature review aspect more, that we must start taking our literature review more seriously, as seriously we take about the research methodology part of our study. Because sometimes it happens that the literature review is weak. If your literature review is weak, then definitely you won't be able to get you won't be able to have a proper research methodology. And if your research methodology is not correct, then definitely the findings and the results of your work is going to get affected. So proper research literature review is very, very important. Please, next slide. Okay. So what is basically a literature review? I don't think that it requires any type of explanation, but still, the slide is here, so let's discuss about it. A literature review is a comprehensive summary of the previous research topic. We all know about it, that a literature review is basically a comprehensive summary of the previous research work which is already done by different scholars, articles which has been published in books or other relevant sources. We, the people of management, always take it into a consideration that we always try to look for a literature review from a reputed journal. It's very important that whenever we focus on literature review, or whenever we focus on writing a good paper, it is very important for us to refer or to look up to a good reputed journal. Because if we look to good reputed journal, you will be able to identify that what are the different changes which are taking place, not only in writing literature but also in different other aspects of writing paper also. The review should enumerate, describe, summarize, objectively evaluate and clarifies the previous research. Like what I have said just now in my previous slide, that just because for the sake of selecting a literature review, or just because there are few keywords, there are few keywords which are similar of my study with the other study, and I just select that part or that study as a part of my literature review, it's not correct. You have to see that the problems what you are describing, you have to see whether the objectively, whether my will there be any contribution, will there be any like the work which has been done in that previous research, how that is going to help me, how that previous literature review is going to help me or contributing in my study. That is very important for us to understand before selecting anything as a literature review, or just because on the basis of the few keywords, we have to see that what is important for us in select as to be a part of our literature review. A literature review creates a landscape for a reader, giving him a full or her a full understanding of the development in that field. Yes, like the past, what we are looking, it gives us a proper picture, it gives us a proper understanding, but how the phase wise the development is taking place. We all know that the area of management is such an area where every day there are different changes which are taking place. The how we are dealing with the people, how we are like into the different concepts of artificial intelligence is also coming into the area of HR. So it is becoming a tough task for the people, for a tough task for the organizations to manage the people with the artificial intelligence concepts in getting into the industry, because to get a to develop a balance of artificial intelligence and human resource is also difficult. So that just because of that, there are different changes which are taking place. And we as a researcher, not only just simply studying the changes which are taking place in the industry or in the management area or the practical aspect, but we are also contributing. We can also contribute. We can suggest new ideas that the way we are managing or the way how it will be better to manage the artificial intelligence with the human resource. And that will be only possible if we see a phase-wise development of or the acceptance of different aspects or the different, just artificial intelligence is just an example. It can be a consumer behavior aspect also. We can see that how phase-wise consumer behavior aspect has changed into an organization. How the changes in the consumer behavior aspect is giving importance to the marketing, or how it is changing the marketing scenario, whether the results which are expected from that change in the consumer behavior aspect is the organization is able to get that results or not. All these things can be only possible if we do a thorough literature review and if we give a proper suggestion and a proper time to the literature review aspect of our of the work. Next slide, please. The purpose. Previous, please. Previous slide, please. Purpose of literature review. The main purpose of literature review is to familiarize yourself with the current state of knowledge of your topic, to ensure that you are not just repeating what others have already done. Yes, this is like a big problem which we face not only with the students, but many times of different research, like the PhD scholars also, that we just end up with repeating what others have already done. This is the main problem. What if you are just simply reporting the work which is already being done by somebody else? Then what is the contribution you are giving? What addition you are making into this whole like galaxy of the education or the whole idea? What is your contribution? What new you are contributing? Just to get a safe side, if you have that idea, if you have that orientation to do a research, then it is important. Yes, it is important to look at the work which has already been done in the past, but you have to identify the gap where if I have left my study somewhere, then you have to pick up your study from that point and you have to add a new points in that study. It's very important that we don't end up just by reporting what others have done. to identify the gap in knowledge and to resolve the problem. Identifying the gap, like when we move to the next slides also, you will see that the whole idea, and in my further slides, I'm going to differentiate also between a literature review or a narrative literature review and a systematic literature review. You will see that why systematic literature review is more acceptable in research area. You will see that the main thing, the first and the foremost rule for any systematic literature review is that the gap identification. You have to identify your gap properly, and if you are able to identify your research gap properly, then only you will be able to formulate your research question. I'm going to share few papers also with you from the area of HR, which are based on the literature review only. In that, you will see that those papers clearly focus on the question. The question is very important, and that question is based upon the gap. So to get a proper gap or to identify a gap, it is important that we go through different papers which are already being published, and rather than focusing on or rather than just having this idea that we just simply copy the work which is already being done, the main idea is that we must try to identify the gap and to take the things further. To develop a theoretical framework and methodology. Yes, if you are able to identify a proper gap, then definitely, as I have said, that then definitely your methodology can be developed. Sometimes it happens that we frame our hypothesis, we frame our objectives, and then later on, when we come to the stage of giving a pre-submission, or when we come to the stage of sending our paper for a publisher, then many times it happens that we get a feedback that your hypothesis, your objectives, your topic, your literature review are not coinciding with each other. They like your literature review is focusing on some area, your objectives are talking about some things, your hypothesis is indicating something else. So why it happens? It's just because it happens with that, because we have missed that important foundation. In my very second slide only, I told you that a literature review helps us to build a strong foundation. We all know that whenever we build any house, then definitely we always focus that the foundation of that house must be strong and strong enough so that it can bear, like the whole structure can stand on that foundation. So similarly, the due importance must be given to the literature review also, and we must give an important time. We must give a proper time to the literature review so that the gaps must be properly identified, and then the framework and methodology part of that literature review of that study can be properly developed. To provide an overview of the key findings and debates of the topic, writing the literature review shows your reader how your work relates to the existing research and what new insight will it contribute. So definitely, whenever we write a literature review properly, it is very important. It will give an insight to the people. It will give an idea to the people that what actually we want to convey, because the whole purpose of our study will get defeated if we are not able to convey, if we are not able to make people understand that what we want to convey. Next slide, please. Okay, coming to the main topic, that is systematic literature review. Before getting into this, I just want to give you a very brief introduction about what is systematic literature review. A systematic literature review is basically originated in the area of medicine. Because why it is developed in the area of medicine? Because it is a evidence-based, a practical thing. So it is much easier. It is much easier for the doctors to see case to case that how this case has been treated with a similar type of problem and how that case has been treated. Then another person can easily refer to that case if they have a similar type of a case. So it is much easier that we do a systematic literature review in the area of medical sciences, because there you can easily refer. But the expansion in evidence-based practice had led to the increasing in the variety of review types. Like we, from the area of management, we all know that because we are dealing with the human, because we are dealing with the market, because we are dealing with so many things where it is very difficult to predict the future, where it is very difficult to set something into a pattern. You cannot predict a human behavior. You can just simply, you can just assume, like you can assume that because of this policy, people may behave in such a way. But if you cannot guarantee it, but because the area of management is growing each and every day, there are different types of researches which are coming. We we are different, each and everybody is different, everybody has their own likings and dislikings, everybody have their own preferences, but still people believe that it is important that we must see that how we can still develop a evidence-based understanding in in the area of management. So finally, in 2003, Cranfield discussed the origin of evidence-based approach in the area of management, and then later on, not only into the area of management, later on in different areas of humanities, this concept of systematic literature review came into a picture. And then we can see that the different areas in which a systematic literature review is coming, definitely the quality of the research is improving. And now it was just like when people used to believe that only into the area of medical sciences we will be able to use a systematic literature review. No, now in the area of management, now in the area of humanities also, people are extensively using a systematic literature review. So a systematic literature review identifies, selects, and critically appraise the research in order to answer a clearly formulated question. So in the previous type of literature review, what we were doing in previous type of literature review, or the common literature review, what many of us used to follow, what we used to do, we used to formulate a research question as soon as we come to the part of research methodology. But the main difference between a systematic literature review and a traditional literature review is that the whole idea of systematic literature review starts with the question. It is important that there must be a proper question. A systematic review should follow a clearly defined protocol. Now, what is this, a protocol? A protocol is basically the criteria are clearly stated before the review is going to take place. This protocol is basically the plan that how we are going to conduct our research. What type of transparent policies which we are going to use, like what type of database which we are going to use, how we are going to see that that what type of literature we are going to pick up, or a multiple, not only the multiple database which we are going to do, go through in a structural literature review. Apart from that, we are also going to focus on the gray literature part also. Now, I think many of a gray literature is not a new word for many of us, but if it is a new word for you, so I'll just explain you that what is a gray literature. A gray literature is basically the literature which is not being used in a systematic literature review. It is being used in a systematic literature review. So a systematic literature review identifies, selects, and critically appraise the research in order to answer a clearly formulated question. So in the previous type of literature review, what we were doing in a grey literature is basically a material which is provided by the organization outside a traditional and commercial and academic publication. Whatever the papers which are published by the government, that it can be called as a grey literature. That even which these type of grey literature we are not taking into consideration when we are focusing on a traditional literature review. But now when we are focusing on a systematic literature review, then in that case, we will also take into consideration while defining a protocol for a systematic literature review of our study, we will definitely see that this, if there is a need of a grey literature, that must be properly addressed in the beginning only. And it must be taken into consideration that if we are addressing that point of a use of grey literature, then it should be clearly defined or clearly mentioned in the protocol of our research. It is a comprehensive, transparent search conducted over a multiple database and a grey literature. A review identifies the information searched, critiqued, and reported within a time frame. This is also important because sometimes if you look to the different types of literature review, you will see that sometimes a literature review is a systematic literature review is sometimes based on a time also, like a time frame, like the studies which are conducted from 2010, let's suppose, till 2020. So we are only going to focus on the time frame. That is the important, that will be an important aspect, or we can say like the studies which, like the types of literature review can be a domain based. Like if we want to do a study that is based on a particular type of a domain, or the systematic literature review which is based on a particular theories, it will help us to see that how these theories are developed. And then what we are going to do, we are going to select the review which are based on that theories only, and on the basis of those theories we are going to write a systematic literature review paper. Come to the next slide, please. Why are systematic review necessary? The volume of published material makes it empirical for an individual clinical to remain up to date in a variety of common conditions. It is further complicated when individual studies report conflicting conclusion, a problem that is prevalent when small patent samples and retrospective designs are used. It can be a question in your mind that when we have this traditional literature review, then what is the need of a systematic literature review, and why this systematic literature review basically came into a big picture? I think my next slide will be able to answer that question. Will you please show the next slide? This is basically, I'm very sorry that it's not very clear, but if you just look to the images, you will find the same image, and then you will be able to understand that what exactly is this diagram is all about. If you look to this diagram clearly shows us about this. This can be a representation of a filter where a different types of studies are entering into that filter, and in the last we can see that there is a systematic literature review. Like if you are able to see, I'm sorry for that, that this literature review is focusing, while I'm discussing with you that what is the need of a systematic literature review. Earlier, when we are doing our literature review, we are only focusing on the upper part of the filter. Like we are selecting each and everything, whatever is available, whatever is matching with the keywords of my topic, we are just simply selecting it. But when the systematic literature review came into picture, now we are just simply filtering each and everything, and then we are focusing on the main aspect, that what actually is going to help us in the coming in our main literature review. So the basic things or the steps which are necessary in a systematic literature review, the very first point is to check for existing reviews and protocol. I have discussed with you in the previous slide that it is the review which is required here also. You can change the question of answers and different altered question, what the review have done well, when it is done, what is there been developed in the area of research since then. It is a broad enough, but the traditional literature review is not giving us this opportunity to focus on the question aspect, which is an important part when we are writing about the review. Then the second point here we can see, which is mentioned here, is to identify a research or to identify a protocol. Why this protocol is important? This protocol is basically important that to select or to know the whole concept of that filter will work only when we will focus on the protocol. That while I am selecting that research, we must have a valid reason. We must have a valid idea that why we are selecting that research, what that review is going to contribute, how that review is going to contribute in my study. That is important. And another important thing here is to see the inclusion and exclusion criteria. Now, what is inclusion and exclusion criteria? Inclusion and exclusion criteria is basically the process where we review the protocol. We have just set the protocol, and then through inclusion and exclusion criteria, we will cross-check the protocol or review the protocol which we have developed. And why we are doing this? This will clearly state us to determine or to know that what is to be included, whether this particular study to be included in a research or not. Like different things, like consider the population which is used in that study. Will that population is more or less similar to my study or not? Whether the research design which is there in the study which is used is similar to my study or not. So intervention types is also important. Comparison group is also important. Measured group is also important. So inclusion and exclusion criteria is an important point of a systematic literature review, which we are finding it difficult when we are focusing on a traditional literature review. Then the next important thing here is that we must search for the studies. The whole idea of doing a literature review, the whole idea of doing a systematic literature review is based on the database. To run the search, the database, you will identify that how relevant, how much it is important, how important is that study for you. So to search a relevant database is important, and when we have a relevant database, then it is important. Now we see that now we have this facility that different institutes have this facility to have a prescribed database, like we have Scopus, we have Web of Science, we have EBSCO with us. So by that, from that different database, we can select or search for the different studies, that how these studies are going to help. But again, here also I want to say that the approach towards selecting a gray literature is again an important part of a systematic literature review. Then apart from that, what is important in a steps of a systematic literature review is to select studies for inclusion based and predetermined criteria. Like if we select any study, then we must have a proper idea at why we are selecting a study. Before starting this presentation, when we are doing a demo, like when I'm having a demo with the dean ma'am, at that time we were discussing that how much important it is that, or how much it is possible that if I am doing like if me and ma'am, we both are doing a research on more or less similar topic, whether it is possible that we get a same type of results or not. So at that time we were discussing that it is possible that there must be same type of result, but the whole idea again is based upon that what like the studies which we are including, it is also based upon that how inclusion and exclusion criteria, what type of inclusion and exclusion criteria I am following. It is also important that what protocol we are following. And the most important thing is that the question which is there in my mind, whether that question is there in the mind of ma'am or not, or are we able to think, are we more or less thinking on the same thing. Here at this point, I just want to show you one research paper, and let me just share the screen. Oh, I think that it's not possible for me to share the screen, but I will. Okay.
Now you can share the screen.
Yes, definitely. Now I can see. Oh. Okay, let it be, because let it be. Because at the time when you are sharing, I have to switch off the whole thing, then it's not there. It will waste some time. Let's come back. You can easily search. If you just simply write the research paper based on a systematic literature review in any area, whether the area of HR, marketing or finance, production, supply chain, any area, you will see that each paper which is there based on a systematic literature review, whether it's from the area, whether it is published in Emerald, or whether it's published in Sage, whether it's published in any of the Scopus journal, you will see that they focus on the question. So every literature, every systematic literature review starts with the idea of that question. That question is very important. And if you are not able to identify, or if you are not able to get the correct question, then it will be difficult for you to do a systematic literature review. And to get that question, you have to identify the gap. And to identify gap, again coming back to the previous slide, identify the gap, you have to look into the past. You have to know the past, that what work has been done, already been done, and then only you will be able to proceed into some future. Next is that why it is important to evaluate the risk of basis of included studies. It is also sometimes very risky that what type of studies I am including, because we know that the research which we are doing is like, sometimes it happens that we don't have a good, like the risk business tool is like use of risk bias tool is very important when you do any research to assess the potential biasness of the study. it is important that there must be no biasness when you are selecting the studies for your systematic literature review. Because if there is a biasness in the study, then definitely we will not be able to get the purpose, the whole purpose of doing a systematic literature review will get defeated if we are not, if there is a component of biasness while selecting a study. So that biasness must not be there in any type of literature, whatever we are selecting, and that must be properly based on again, I will say it must be based on a inclusion and exclusion criteria. Now, sometimes it happens that we are not like, it's a new term and it's get difficult for us to understand that what basically is inclusion and exclusion criteria. I will explain it in my next coming slides, that what is basically an inclusion and exclusion criteria. So the whenever we do a systematic literature review, in the steps, the next step that is important here is that whatever the work we are doing in our systematic literature review, or whatever work we are publishing, that must be published in that must be published with the evidence. It is important that there must be a proper evidence which is available, which is which must be there, so that the research, or so that result, whatever conclusion you are making, must be acceptable. Because when you are publishing a research, you are not just publishing a research for yourself, you are publishing a research so that you can contribute to all the people who are aspiring, who are in that mode, or who are there in that thought of doing a research on the topic which may or may be similar, or something which on your research is already been based. So in that case, whenever you publish your research, it must be based on some evidence, it must be based on some proper protocol, it must be based on some proper techniques or the criteria, so that your research can be futurely acceptable. Now, when we talk about the criteria, the basic simple criteria which comes in our mind about a systematic literature review is inclusion and exclusion criteria. Inclusion and exclusion criteria is basically factors like age, gender, race, ethnicity, types and stages, like which to be included. What is to be included in my study? We have to, like in the beginning only, we have to exclude and include. Like we all know that the area of management or the area of research is so vast that it is very difficult. Like we cannot say that any research, the topic, that like if the topic on which I'm doing a research, I know each and everything about my topic. No, it's not possible, because as I said, that every day. So it's important that inclusion and exclusion criteria must be followed, that what are the things which I am going to include in my study, what are the things which I am going on the top, or the areas in which I am going to focus, and what I am not going to focus must be clearly defined at the time when we are writing a protocol for our study. Because if we are not able to do that, then definitely it will be very difficult for you to summarize, or how you are going to conclude the area. Like if we see that I want to do any study in which I just only want to focus on the people sleep pattern, let's suppose, and I'm taking into consideration the age, the gender, the type of work they are doing, and these few things also which I'm focusing. But if it is not possible, because the sleep is not only affected by age, gender, the work they are doing, it also get affected by the mental state of a person. If I'm not taking into consideration, I have to define in my protocol only that I have not taken into consideration the family status of that person, or I'm not taking into consideration the aspect related with the social life of that person. I might be taking into consideration the age, the gender, the type of work they are doing, the social media influence on that person, or the engagement of that person on the social media. I might be taking all that thing into consideration, but I might not be taking into consideration the family aspect of that person, that how that family, how if it might be possible that any problem is there in the family, just because of that the sleep pattern of any person is getting affected, and but I'm not taking into consideration. So it is, I'm just explaining you in a very simple word that that this is basically inclusion and exclusion, that what are the things which I am going to include in my study, and what are the points which I am going to exclude from my study, and which are not going to be a part of my study. That must be clearly defined at the time when we are defining the protocol of a study. Please come to the next slide. Okay. Key characteristics of a systematic. I think I have covered mostly the part through that graph only. A clearly stated title and objective is important. A comprehensive study to search a relevant study. Explicit and justified criteria for inclusion and exclusion of the study. Clear presentation of the characteristics of each study, including an analysis of methodology quality. Comprehensive list of all the studies included and justification for exclusion. It's not like that simply on the basis of my choice I exclude anything. No, you have to see, you must have a proper justification, you must have a proper reason that why you are not selecting that factor in your study when you are doing a systematic literature review. That any factor, each and every factor which is available there is contributing somehow in the study. But why you are not selecting? Why you have selected age? Why you have selected gender? Why you have selected the influence of a social media or the engagement of the social media? Then you must have that proper answer, and all these answers must be answered at the time when you are defining the protocol, or when you are trying to when you are starting the study. So it is important that you must see that the protocols must be set properly. Not only setting a protocol is important. In my previous slide only, I had explained you that reviewing of protocol is also very important. It may be possible that sometimes we feel that I am not able to define my protocols properly. Then you have this opportunity to review your protocols properly, so that you can write them in a proper way, and then you can start doing your literature review accordingly. Come to the next slide, please. Okay, there is nothing new in this. Please come to the next. Okay, now we come to very important part, or the part I think which many of us are interested, or many of us want to know, is about a different methods of systematic literature review. I think by now we all are able to understand that why systematic literature review is important, and how systematic literature review is contributing, will contribute in our future researches also, and how systematic literature review will help us. I think you have a brief idea about a systematic literature review. Now coming to the next point, that is methods of systematic literature review. There are few questions I can see in the chat box. Can we use a Google Scholar advanced search? Yes, definitely we can use a Google Scholar, but I request that there will be a session at the end where we can answer the questions. But just now, as I have seen that question, so I just want to tell you that student, yes, we can use a Google Scholar for advanced researches, and that will definitely help us. But not only Google Scholar, there are different database also which are available. By that you can go through different literature, by you can like see or the different database which are available. But while going through these database, you have to be very careful that the databases are authentic or not, because there are different types of database which are available. Definitely, when we want to get our research paper published, when we want our work to be published, we always look towards a reputed journal. Excuse me. We always want a paper to be published in a reputed journal. So when we are selecting any data source, or whenever we are selecting any source, it is again an important thing that we must be responsible. We must act responsibly while selecting a database, because if you select any database which is a compromised database, then what will happen? Then definitely you will end up with again in a state of confusion, where your hypotheses are not matching with your objectives are not coinciding with the literature, and finally your whole research methodology is going to get affected. So whenever you select any database, you have to see that it is an authentic database. And we all know that if you look towards Scopus is a very authentic database. If you look towards Web of Science, again, it is a very authentic database. If you look towards EBSCO, it's a very reputed and authentic database. Google Scholar is also a good source by which you can have a good database with you. So there are others also, and we have like this facility also, that institutes and colleges and universities get a subscription of a reputed database, so you can use that database also. But always try to see to use an authentic database. Now coming again to the topic, that is methods of systematic literature review. The very first method which I'm going to discuss with you all is a narrative review. What is basically a narrative review? A narrative review summarizes the studies on the subject of concern previously published. It concentrates on concepts, hypotheses, and the method of studies or the finding of research. I think if you remember, in my few back slides, I was discussing with you that when we do a systematic literature review, that systematic literature review can be based on different, like it can be a domain based literature review, it can be a demographic based literature review, it can be based on a time also. So here when we talk about a narrative reviews are those reviews which focus on a previously published study. That is very much obvious because we are talking about a literature review. Then just a second. As we are talking about a literature review, so it is very much obvious that we are going to focus on a previously published research. But this previously published research, when it comes to a narrative review, it focuses on the concepts, hypothesis, and methods of studies or the findings of the research. The narrative examination also serves as a suitable starting point for a potential research and development. It allows the researcher to define and reframe the questions or theories in the research. So basically, this concept or this idea of a narrative literature review is the most significant element of this research are the completion and synthesis of the existing literature and the full report on this recent expertise in the field under study. This is a simplest way of writing a systematic literature review, because when we go into the advanced or when we look to different other methods also, you will see that those different methods are more like bit complicated as comparatively compared to a narrative literature review. So this type of literature review is basically very helpful for a potential new person who want to start writing a systematic literature review, because the main objective is to the main objective of a narrative review is to provide the reader with an extensive context to understand existing knowledge and to emphasize the value of the new research. So narrative review basically focus on the concepts, hypotheses, and the methods of studies which are used in the previous research. So if you are interested to write a systematic literature review paper, then the best thing is that you start focusing on narrative review and start collecting different papers. The first thing what you have to do is that you have to first select the topic. And as soon as you select your topic, then you have, on the basis of that topic, you have to go through the previous published researches which are there. Then on the basis of those previous researches which are available there, you have to frame your research question. And when you are able to frame your research question, and then if you are writing your paper based on a narrative review, then definitely you can frame your question on the basis of the concepts which are used in that in those papers. You can have a research question based on the hypotheses which are used in that paper. You can develop your literature review or a narrative literature reviews on different theories which are there, and then on that basis you can start writing or start working on a systematic literature review paper which is based on a narrative review. Next slide, please. Then the next point here, or the next method, is mapping or descriptive review. The main purpose of descriptive review is to establish whether the body of information reveals discoverable pattern and trends in the given subject concerning pre-existing ideas, hypothesis, methodology, or result in the specific field of research. This kind of review follow a systematic and a clear processes, including searching, evaluating, and classification of the studies in comparison with the narrative review. If you look to the difference between mapping or descriptive reviews, you will see that as a narrative review is focusing sorry, as the narrative review is focusing on the methodological aspect, or focusing on the theoretical aspect, or focusing on the concept aspect, this method is now focusing on the methodological aspect which is used in the paper. And this method also focuses And this kind of review allow a systematic and a clear process, including searching, evaluating, and classification of study. When you write your paper on the basis of mapping or descriptive review, then in that case, it is important for you to see that your paper is like fulfilling few criteria. And what are those criteria? Those criteria are basically that how it is being the process, what is a process which is being followed in selecting, follows a systematic and a clear process. It is important that there must be a clear pattern which must be selected while doing that type of a review. So to produce quantitative findings, including published year, research methods, data gathering techniques, and direction of extensive descriptive review. In this, author draws some essential feature from the individual frequency analysis and the sample. The main idea behind a descriptive review is that a descriptive review may say that its findings reflect the state of the art in the specific area. This basically focuses on that how systematically you have followed the whole process of selecting the review of literature and what are the different methods how you have selected that literature review. Come to the next slide, please. Scoping review. A scoping review seeks to provide an original indication of the current and the future scale. In the very second slide, I discussed with you the future aspect of a literature review. That literature review not only focus on the past, but it also focus on the future also. So not the scoping review not only focus on the current state, that what is the current state, but it also focus on the future scale of the literary sector or on an emerging subject. That what can be a different topics or the different areas which can come up. The literature is based on the listing of new topics. The scope assessment can be undertaken in order to evaluate the scope and nature of the research activities in a specific field, design the importance of conducting and thorough structural analysis on recognizing gaps in established research. So scoping review. This scoping review focus on the structural analysis to recognize the gap. Just like there can be in the narrative review, we are not focusing on any structural analysis to identify the gap. In that narrative review, we are just simply basing our understanding to select the gap which is being there in the previous studies and the present study what we are doing. But when we talk about a scoping review, so scoping review focus on that how this the whole process of gap recognition, on what basis we are able to recognize the gap, that is important. And that is not only important, that the whole idea of the study, the whole idea of a systematic literature review or a scoping review is based on the concept of selecting or recognizing the gap, that how that gap is being identified. And then after identifying the gap, it is important that we established our research. So on just by that only, but like in scoping review, we focus on that aspect. Come to the next slide, please. Aggregative review. Now, when we talk about aggregative review, you will see that another, like the point here in itself is a systematic review. So in systematic analysis, any empirical data that signifies a set of requirements previously defined may be aggregated and synthesized in one source. In systematic review, concrete scientific standards and a strict methodology is closely followed. So, so when we talk about systematic review, as the name in itself is suggesting, that systematic review is basically the review which is done systematically. The whole idea, the system is very important when we follow a systematic literature review. It can be, the system can be in the area that how we are selecting a review. The system can be in the area that what's the standard, what will be the standard of the paper which we are going to include in our research, and a strict methodology. I think in your coming sessions of this FDP, you will definitely have, I have gone through the brochure, and there is Professor Dhaval Mehta also, who is going to be a resource person for this FDP session. And I know sir is definitely going to focus on this methodological part. So this methodology, how you have to follow the methodology is very important, because a strict methodology must be followed when we talk about a systematic literature review. It should not be just now, few slides back, I have shown you one filter. So in that filter, just because the main thing of the main important role of that filter in a systematic literature review is to get the purest thing. Whenever we filter something, the main purpose of filtering is to get a pure form of any extract, or the extract whatever we are getting. So systematic review basically follow the method. Each and every aspect is important whenever we follow a systematic review method. That what are the different protocols which we are following, what are the methodology we are going to use, how we are going to select the previous studies which are going to be a part of my study. So each and everything must be there based on a system, and every system must be defined in a protocol, and reviewing of protocol is very important. So reviewing protocols so that the system may not get breaks. Then again, a second part under aggregative review is a meta-analysis. So meta-analysis, it is regarded as an effective synthesized tool that helps the researcher to draw conclusive results by developing proven methods. Meta-analysis integrates independent research findings in a single objective evaluation or overview effect, a scale utilizing a strategical approach. Meta-analysis, we all know that meta-analysis is something which is a very new concept which is coming nowadays. We try to analyze, we try to put the concept or the idea of meta-analysis in the different areas of management or in the area of humanities also. So meta-analysis is basically regarded as an effective synthesized tool that helps the researcher to draw a conclusive results by developing a proven method. Whenever we do a meta-analysis, or whenever any research paper is based on meta-analysis, it is important that it is based on the proven methods. All the methods which are they use there in this meta-analysis must be it must be properly proved, it must be tested, it must be checked whether this method is going to like help us to get a results or not, because will help us to answer the question or not, which we have already framed in at the beginning when we are doing a systematic literature review. So this every method whichever we are going to use in a meta-analysis must be properly checked, must be properly proved, must be properly gone through, or must be tested many times, so that the results of the analysis which is done through a meta-analysis can be evaluated properly, so that the objective evaluation or the overview effect of scale utilizing strategically approaches, like whatever approach we are using or whatever approach we are putting in the work must be filled up, and just a second, that the results, whatever, I request the participant, please don't pop up with the questions. We will have a doubt session because it just simply breaks the rhythm. So please. So when we talk about meta-analysis, it is very important that we use a proper scientific techniques to answer, to see that the methods, whatever we are using, is satisfying our purpose or not. Come to the next slide, please. The next point here, or the next method of systematic literature review, is realistic review. The realistic reviews involves conceptual studies focused on theory, built to discuss, enhance a complete traditional structural review through sensing different complex policy data that can be applied to the governance in various contexts. This concept applies basically in the field of medicine and education, where randomized clinical test studies can be combined to assess whether the new treatment or procedure improves the outcome. When I was giving you the introduction of a systematic literature review, at that time only I told you that the systematic literature review was the concept which was first started in the area of medicine. Then after, in the area of medicine, this was adopted in the area of, not only in the area of management, but also in different areas of humanities also. So here, when we talk about a realistic review, this realistic review is a concept that basically applies in the field of medicine and education, where randomized clinical test studies can be combined to assess whether the new treatment or procedures improves the outcome. Like here, I just want to give you a very small example. If you look to a TAM model, what is a TAM model? TAM model is basically the model where we try to assess the accessibility or the acceptance of people towards a new technology. Clear? So that TAM model focus on the education sector. Like we all know that after the COVID or after pandemic, this concept of Zoom, Skype, or this digital concept is like emerged, it has emerged like anything. And now we are so comfortable with this digital method that now we came up with a new term that is a hybrid also. Now we have no problem if we have this hybrid culture of offline and online existing in any organization. So here, what we basically do when we do a realistic review, then in that realistic review, basically to apply something, or like if government wants that digital education must be applied to all the schools, then in that case, it is very, or to see whether the digital education acceptance is there in their teachers as well as the students also. Then in that case, what we can do, we can conduct a small research or a controlled research on a small number of students as well as on the teacher, and on the basis of that result we can apply to the other schools also. So here, when what we are doing, we are just trying to assess that if any new treatment or procedure outcomes is affecting the whole population or not. In that case, a realistic review focus on how this will help. This will help us when we will see that what is the gradual approach, what is the gradual, like what people are actually doing. Because in systematic literature review, we are not conducting any type of a research. We are not focusing on a primary data source. In a systematic literature review, the whole idea of writing a research paper, the whole idea of conducting a research is based on a secondary data, where we are only focusing on a published data which is already existing, and on that basis only we are going to select, on that basis only we are going to see that how things are going to change into the future. So if you want to develop any study, or if you want to make a study that how digital education is impacting the proficiency of the students, how whether digital education is contributing in enhancing the knowledge of the student, then what you have to do, you have to just simply look to different papers which are already being published, or different reports which are already being published, so that you can see that that how that is developing, how that is influencing and what are the areas which are being selected there. And only on the basis of that you will be able to do a realistic review, where you will focus on not only on like the theory aspect, but it will also focus on the traditional and structural review, sensing complete complex policy data that can be applied to governance in various contexts. So as what I'm saying, by that example, I just want to make you understand that the realistic review help us to peep into the future, that how the things which are taking place now is going to affect the future. That you will be able to do through a realistic review method, where you will focus on different theories, where you will focus on different decisions, where you will focus on different traditional structural approaches which are used in that realistic reviews. Please come to the next slide. Then the next point is a critical review. A critical review attempts to examine and assess a current literature objectively in a given field of emphasis, to report achievements, shortcomings, discrepancies, conflicts, anomalies, and the other relevant problems related to the ideas, assumptions, processes, or finding of the study. So critical review basically attempts to examine and assess the current literature objectively. If we see to the literature which is available to us, it is important that we focus on that literature objectively and see that what are the different achievements, shortcomings, and discrepancies which are taken, because like it is also very important to address the problem. Like everybody wants a solution, but how, if we all look for the solution, then how the problems will be solved. So in a critical review, the critical review attempts to examine and assess the current literature objectively in a given field of emphasis to report achievements, shortcomings, discrepancies, and conflict. Like the area, like when you write your whenever you write your research paper, when you write your thesis, you have to write your limitations also, or the problems which are focal, the problems which you come across while doing that research. So this critical review aspect will focus on the discrepancies, the shortcomings, the conflicts, and the anomalies which are relevant in that research area, or which are relevant or which are there in that research paper. So it is related with the ideas, assumptions, and processes and the findings of the study. So this critical review focus on that part of the review of any of the paper. Please come to the next slide. Okay, now coming to, I think we are on time. Now I'm coming towards the end of my topic. So here I just want to focus on, or I just want to emphasize on a literature review versus a systematic literature review. From the very first slide, when I started my presentation, I discussed with you all that what is a literature review. Then I moved towards a systematic literature review. Now, I just want to end up my presentation again with this difference, a clear difference between a systematic literature review and a literature review. Please come to the next slide. So I think by now you all must be able to answer what is literature review and what is a systematic literature review. A literature review and a systematic literature review both are used to provide a summary of existent literature or knowledge on a specific topic. We know that the whole purpose of a literature review and a systematic literature review is to provide the summary of existent literature or knowledge on a specific topic. It is important that there must be a topic, or there must be a problem on which we want to do a research. So whether it is a traditional literature review or whether it's a systematic literature review, the whole purpose of both the types of literature review is to provide the summary of the existent literature which is already available. The purpose of both is to gain understanding of the existing research theories and debates relevant to the particular topic or the area of the study. The purpose is to gain the understanding. The purpose is to gain more insight. The purpose is to gain more in-depth knowledge about any of the topic on which we are doing our research. So a systematic literature review as well as traditional literature review definitely is going to help us in adding knowledge. So it will help us to gain something or on a particular topic on which we want to do a research. Come to the next slide. Systematic review is conducted based on certain number of predefined guidelines or protocols. I hope by now you all know about those guidelines and protocols. Traditional reviews are more general and usually answer broad and descriptive research questions. Yes, this is the major difference between a traditional and a systematic literature review, that when we talk about a traditional literature review, a traditional literature review try to address a broad area, try to address a broad question, like so many questions are addressed when we talk about a traditional literature review. While conducting traditional literature review, there is no specific guideline or a criteria for searching a research topic. The only criteria of searching a research topic through a traditional literature review is based on the keywords. What are the keywords which are there in my topic? What are the like keywords in my objective. On the basis of those objectives, how I am going to develop my hypothesis, or what are the variables which I have identified, and on the basis of those identified variables, I am going to search to the different factors, and on the basis of those factors, I'm just going to look for a literature review. There is so many things, like the traditional literature review is trying to address so many problems at a single time. But when we talk about a systematic literature review is more focused. A systematic literature review is more precise. A systematic literature review is more result oriented. A systematic literature review is more focusing on our results, that what actually we want to see, and on that basis of that systematic literature review, we will see that the results which are there, the results what we get out of systematic literature review are much more concrete, are much more universally accepted, are much more common as comparatively to a traditional literature review. So systematic literature review gives us a more narrow perspective. So no inclusion and exclusion criteria was used when we talk about a traditional literature review. No restrictions regarding article selections, no restriction of quality assessment. But when we were discussing about a systematic literature review, we have seen that it is very important that we see that the quality of the papers or the quality of the articles, whatever we are selecting, must be clearly defined. And that definition is not on the basis, like we cannot change it now and then. We have to, before getting into a systematic literature review, before getting into towards the results and finding, we have to, on a very second part, we have to define the protocols. And when we are able to define, and when we are defining the protocols, at that time only we have to see that what are the quality assessments we are going to use. We have to see that what will be the basis of quality article selections which we are going to use. So on that part only, at that point only, we have to see that what inclusion and exclusion criteria we are going to use in our coming research. So all these 3 points which are not existing in a traditional literature review is basically the core of a systematic literature review. So that is why we can say that a systematic literature review is now being more acceptable, is now being emerging like a new concept, where you can see that if you write papers through a systematic literature review, or if you follow this idea of systematic literature review while doing your research work, you will see that the acceptance is much higher as comparatively when you write a traditional literature, when you write a paper based on a traditional literature review. By this, I don't want to say this thing that a traditional literature review is not good. No, I'm not saying that. But I just want to tell you one thing, that a traditional literature review, like we all know that a change is an important aspect of a management. So now, as the things have been changed in different areas of management, there is a change in the area of review of literature also. So now this traditional review of literature is now a part of, or had changed as a systematic literature review, because there are few things which a traditional literature review is lacking, which has been covered or which has been improved in a systematic literature review. Please come to the next slide. So by here, I have just concluded the whole difference between a literature review and a systematic literature review. This literature review is basically a traditional one. So if you look to the definition, qualitatively summarize evidence on a topic using informal or subjective methods to collect the interpret data. A high-level overview of primary research on a focused question that identifies, select, and synthesize and appraise all high-quality research evidence related to that question. We all know that the quality is very important whenever we talk about a systematic literature review. Then the research question often unclear and broad. Previously, just now I told you that the main problem with the traditional literature review is that traditional literature review try to address a broader problems, try to address so many problems at one single point. But when we talk about systematic literature review, the systematic literature review basically is much more specific, much more specified, and this will definitely help us in understanding the question or to answer the question much more in a much proper way. Then the next point is generally provide summary or overview of topic, answer a focused clinical question. I just addressed that thing, that it provide an overview or a summary of the topic, but a systematic literature review answer, it is more clinical, like it simply answer the question which you have selected, which you select at the very beginning, and then you will be able to answer that question. Come to the next slide. So now we have a doubt session. If anybody want to ask something.
Very good afternoon, ma'am. I'm Akanksha, and I will be a moderator for Q&A session. It was a very informative and learning session. We enjoyed a lot. Thank you very much for your time and dedication for giving us so much of knowledge about systematic literature review. Ma'am, we have lots of queries on our YouTube as well as on Zoom platform. So if you're permitted, can we start the session?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So, ma'am, the first question comes, how we can find the total number of paper published on our topic in Web of Science or Scopus?
Akanksha, okay. Akanksha, as we all know that there are different types of databases which are available. So if you start looking for a total number of paper, because it's not possible actually, because in every part of the world, there are people who are doing a research on different topics, and those different topics, like there are few specific areas which are the broad areas of management, and under those broad areas of management, there are different small areas. Like, let me take one example of employee engagement. Yeah. So employee engagement, if I am writing a paper here on employee engagement, then in anybody in any part of the world, people might be writing a paper on employee engagement and have already written also. So it is not actually possible that if you start looking for the whole, like the total number of papers which are published, you can only see or you can only know the papers which are like, that is why only there are different criteria. Like we have criteria based on time, we have criteria based on areas, we have criteria based on a demographic profile, we have criteria based on a domain. So that is why only, just because it is not possible to have the whole idea or the total number of papers which are published in that, you can segregate them on the basis of the different, like you can segregate them on the basis of domain, you can segregate on the basis of time, then it will be much easier for you. If you start looking for the total number of paper, then it will be very difficult for you to conclude also, because then it will be like lakhs and lakhs of papers which will be available on any particular topic. So one must be very clear, like these problems basically arise when we are not able to formulate our question properly. If we formulate our question properly, that I want to, like my question can be, what are the changes which are taking place in the employee engagement from 2015, or in multinational companies from 2015 till 2023. So what I did, I just put two brackets here. The first bracket are basically three brackets. First bracket is employee engagement. Second bracket is 2015 to 2023. And the third bracket is the multinational. Now I'm confining my study into a three different brackets. So you have to confine your study. Then only it will be easy for you to conclude your study. Otherwise, it will become impossible for you to conclude the study. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, ma'am, for the answer. So, ma'am, the second question is, if two researchers are doing literature review on the same topic by using systematic literature review, will they get the same literature or same results?
Again, the thing depends upon, yes, 98%, or you can say 90% it is possible that they get a same type of a result. But still there are few chances that there must be a difference. Why there must be a difference? But the whole idea of the difference is only on basis of the protocol or on the basis of the question. If I am focusing on, like if I have not decided the protocols properly, and Akansha Bajpai has decided the protocols properly, or have gone through the protocols or reviewed the protocols in a manner, then definitely the broad area might be the same. But when we come to the conclusion part, then the results which Dr. Hiranmazi is submitting might be bit different from Akansha Bajpai. But more or less we can say that there will be a similarity.
Thank you, ma'am, for the answer. Ma'am, we need to elaborate some of the inclusion and exclusion criteria that you explained. Kindly explain a little bit more.
Okay. Inclusion and exclusion criteria is important aspect of a systematic literature review. And when we decide, when we are writing a protocol for any literature, for a work, then at that time only we have to focus on inclusion and exclusion. As it's not very difficult. It's as the name in itself is suggesting that inclusion and exclusion criteria basically focus on the factors which I'm going to include in my study. On which area, like when I was discussing with you all about different methods of systematic literature review, at that time I have told you that the basic idea or the difference between the different methods of systematic literature review is just because they are focusing on, like, if one method is focusing on the concepts and theories, the another method, the critical method, is simply focusing on the limitation part. So what is to be included and what is not to be included is purely dependent upon the researcher, what actually a researcher wants. And if there is nothing like a set guideline that this must be included in your study and this must be excluded from your study. So, but when you apply, when you do this technique, or when you use this technique of inclusion and exclusion, at that time, you have to be very clear that what you want to include, and that must be properly reviewed also. It must be not only, if I am writing a paper, it doesn't mean that if according to my wish, I may include this, this, this. It must be reviewed. Each and every point of systematic literature review must be cross-checked by different authors or research guide, so that you will be able to know that which points to be included and which points to be excluded.
Thank you, ma'am, for the answer. Ma'am, the next question is there any norms for the range of the papers to be considered for systematic literature review? Like do we have any rules regarding particular criteria?
Again, the answer will be that the rules based upon the domain on which you want to work. Like if you want to work on a paper which are published from 2015 to 2030, then you have to follow that rule. And if you are asking about the number of research papers which are to be used in a systematic literature review, then there is no fixed number. You can review as many as paper which you want, but again, the paper which you are selecting must be able to address the question what you have selected.
Thank you very much, ma'am. All the questions have been ended. Thank you very much. Now, may I please request Honorable Dean ma'am to kindly present the vote of thanks.
Meanwhile, I request host to kindly share the feedback forms and the quiz forms to all the participants. Amazing. I mean, so wonderful session, Eden, Professor Masih. As we conclude this day 2 of faculty development program on a very pertinent theme, that is writing process of literature review, and what are the different inclusion and exclusion techniques into it. And you explained so beautifully. It was, the whole deliberation was so intense, full of information. And, I request all the participants to let us carry this knowledge which they have gained today and the inspiration which they have ignited, and let us strive to implement the best practices learned today and yesterday also, and to contribute in the advancement of their research journey as well as in education. So we have a pool of academicians, research scholars, faculty members from all across India and abroad. So I'm so glad that you have explained the whole process thoroughly. Thank you so much, Professor Masih, for your invaluable insights and expertise on this pertinent aspect of review research. And thank you so much, all the participants, for your active engagement. I have seen, the participants, they were writing their comments, they were appreciating, they were so much engaged in the session, they were learning a lot, and which was very much visible that they were enthusiastic to learn on this topic. On behalf of GL Bajaj Institute of Management, I would like to extend my sincere appreciation and gratitude to our institution's management, top management, our director, sir, and all those who have supported us in organizing this program. The support which we have received from all across different verticals, and the guidance and resources, they were instrumental in making this 5 days online FDP program as a reality. This virtual FDP program is full of very important topics related to literature review, because tomorrow we are going to explain and discuss about how we can do the bibliometric analysis with the help of RStudio. The very next day, we are going to discuss about meta-analysis in detail. The 4th day will be dedicated for meta-analysis part of the literature review, which ma'am has given us a kind of overview that, what is meta-analysis and why it is so important, why it is so systematic, and how this new dimension of research is actually useful for all the researchers. And I know, I truly believe that together we can create a platform for lifelong learning. And I hope that all the participants, they will collaborate all together on this learning journey and will continue to do the research in different domains with full dedication. I'm thankful to the organizing committee for holding this event for hosting this faculty development program with a lot of dedication. They worked a lot to make this possible, to make this successful. So thank you, everyone. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day. I humbly request all the participants, do not forget to fill the feedback forms and the quiz forms which we have shared. From tomorrow onwards, we are not going to share the last day quiz forms or the feedback forms because yesterday was the first day. So that is why we are sharing the day one quiz as well as feedback form today for your convenience. I humbly request the host to kindly share a certificate of appreciation or gratitude to our esteemed resource person, Professor Masih, who has been thoroughly instrumental from last 2 hours in explaining, in teaching all of us more about inclusion and exclusion techniques in literature review. Dear ma'am, this is a small token of virtual appreciation. Kindly accept this virtual appreciation on behalf of the management and our Honorable Director, sir. Thank you so much for your contribution. And I hope that after attending this session, many researchers will be motivated and they will start putting their efforts in this particular direction. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you so much. I extend my thanks to the whole management and to the Dean, Dr. Deepa Gupta. Thank you for giving me this opportunity and all the participants who have patiently participated in this program. And definitely, I hope that you must have learned something and this learning will contribute in your research work also. Thank you. Looking for more future endeavors also. Thank you.
Surely, surely. We will surely incorporate you in your future endeavors, dear.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So, ma'am, I just request our guest and Honorable Dean ma'am to kindly come for the group photo and kindly
Yeah,
wait for
sure.
group.
This is a courtesy photograph.
Yeah.
Professor, I request all the participants also to switch on their cameras because host must have allowed everyone to open their videos. I request organizing committee to kindly share the day one pictures, if possible, today or by tomorrow. To all of them, try to click the pictures from different sources because we have good number of participants in this faculty development program. Once again, I'll make the announcement. Do not forget to fill the feedback form and the quiz form of day 1 and day 2. I hope we have already clicked the pictures. Host, do inform us. Have you clicked the pictures?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Thank you so much.